Ladies and gentlemen, it is with great excitement that I report to you today that Magnus Carlsen and Hans Niemann played an over-the-board game against each other for the first time in like a year. And it is also with a profound sadness that I then tell you that this is probably the last over-the-board game Magnus Carlsen and Hans Niemann are going to play for a very long time. I'm going to cover the freestyle Grand Slam finale taking place right now in December 2025 in South Africa, featuring Magnus, Fabiano Caruana, Aronian, Hans Niemann, Javahir Sindarov, the World Cup champion, and many other strong players. And we will look at the round robin, and we will look at the quarterfinal. Friendly reminder, there are 8 of them. They play a round robin, they determine the seedings, and then they play a quarterfinal, semifinal, and final. I don't actually know how the champion is crowned. I frankly don't remember, but I will be bringing you all those updates as this tournament goes on and concludes over the next few days. But yeah, just sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. And a friendly reminder that this is a type of chess where the back row of pieces is shuffled and randomly selected at the beginning of every game. Not everybody's cup of tea. And certainly the freestyle project has in many ways cooled off since around 10 months ago. 10 months ago, I was in Germany. I was in Weissenhaus. I was very, very optimistic at that point. There was a lot of drama between freestyle and FIDE to crown a world champion and all this stuff. And it looked like a lot of things were in place, including the PR for freestyle. But since then, things have cooled off a bit. But I will show you Magnus, I will show you Sindarov, I will show you Fabiano Caruana, Aronian, Arjun Erigaisi, Vincent Keimer is playing in this tournament. We also have Parham Maksudlu from Iran participating as well. And on that note, let's check out Magnus Carlsen versus Hans Niemann. We open things up with the move pawn to c4, the English opening as it is known. That was a Windows sound as I lowered the volume of my desktop. We open up with c4, the queen is open, the knight is open. If you want a reminder for how to castle, white can actually do it on this very move, and if you would like to castle in this direction, you would need to move your knight and your bishop. We had b4. In general, in this type of format, Fischer random freestyle, whatever you want to call it, it is a good idea to bring out your queen early. Actually, it is quite normal to do so, and generally play on the side of the bishop that is going to have a little bit more space. Hans plays this move d6. Now we have b5, Magnus taking space, d3 and g3. This is the structure that he goes for. It is quite clear that the quality of the light squared bishops is not the same. So Hans has a dark squared bishop to try to counteract. However, Magnus very quickly trades off that bishop. So see, this is very smart play, leaving Magnus with a dominant bishop compared to this bishop, which is going to be very quickly traded. So this is the advantage that Magnus is going to try to exploit against the young phenom, Mr. Niemann. Knight to d7 is the move that Hans chooses, and Magnus continues to expand with ideas of a4. Now, if he gets the pawn to a5 and a6, that would be very nice. He would be severely restricting black's position, but then he would have difficulties actually getting in. Another idea is to just prepare the move a5 generally, then take on b6, and then you actually could potentially land in the position. Anyway, let's see. Knight f6. Knight e3 developing. Hans brings his bishop out, Magnus castles short side because obviously he pushed all his pawns on the other side of the board. Knight b3, and now here a major moment, a major moment. Hans obviously sees a5 coming, and he doesn't want to allow it because if he allows it, it feels like he's going to get swarmed on that side of the board, so he plays a5 himself. However, this move does leave a long-term weakness on b6, and Magnus now uses this moment to strike with pawn to d4. This move is going to open up the position considerably. After pawn takes, knight takes, the knight is going to look to jump into c6. The d file is going to become open. This diagonal is a little bit more open as well. But Hans plays knight e6, clearly baiting Magnus into playing d5, which Magnus happily does. And Hans jumps the knight into d4 and promptly secures the knight in that position, forcing Magnus to do this. And now we have a very unique position on the board, where even though, you know, this bishop is so strong and this one isn't particularly strong, Hans is doing a pretty good job with the pawn play, all things considered. Rook e1 defending, again, trying to prepare a queen move. Rook d3, very logical, and e5. Now, visually speaking, black has a bunch of pawns on dark squares, so he has kind of a Swiss cheese feel here, but it's not really exploitable. This knight is very strong, so very curious to see what Magnus is going to do now. and he correctly plays this move knight d2. The idea of knight d2 is now the knight cannot relieve itself at any moment. So this knight will have to stay here, and white will slowly move this knight and kick the knight out and then try to apply some pressure to the position. So now the knight goes to d5. We have a trade, and all things considered, you now will try to remove this knight from the board completely. So f3, the bishop goes to h3, and now e3. This was always the idea. This was why all the way back here the move knight d2 was played. Knight d2 was played with the intention of playing the move e3, and we kind of see how positional chess works, right? Bishop here, knight here, bishop g4, and now this position is really annoying for black, who loses control, and Magnus begins taking over. This is a worse nightmare situation. Your positional defense against Magnus did not hold up. He has ideas like trapping your bishop on f2 as well, like g4 trapping your bishop. Hans now has to immediately go for counterplay, and Magnus shuts the door completely on the bishop. Hans is going to have to sacrifice material here. He could have gone for c4 to try to maybe delay the inevitable, and then try to put pressure on this pawn, but it was always very difficult. He ended up going here. He sacrifices the knight for 2 pawns. The bishop is free, but now begins the conversion process. Magnus very quickly puts the rooks together. He's going to trade 1 rook and maybe the queen. And if the knight is left on the board against these pawns, it's going to be boop, 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 boop. Like, he's just going to win every single pawn. So you obviously can't play like this. Queen e7, bishop g2, queen f2, queen g3, knight back to c3, h4. And the game actually ends in nice style. Magnus takes on e4. It just looks like a move that can't be played at all, but it can. Bishop e4, rook f6. If you take with a queen, I take the bishop. If you take with a king, I give you a check. I take the queen, I take the bishop. And this game was completely flawless. An absolute masterclass of play, frankly. I mean, positional play. Magnus obtaining a space advantage and then extracting the knight like a rotten tooth from the mouth, just like cutting little incisions around it and then poking it out and removing it. And yeah, just expertly done. Really, really nice game from him. However, the real monster of this tournament is Sindarov. So first of all, if you don't know Sindarov, right, like if somehow you haven't followed the World Cup, if you haven't followed chess at all this year, Sindarov burst on the scene like 7 years ago, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, when he became one of the youngest grandmasters of all time. I think he became a grandmaster at like 13-ish. He's like top 3, top 4 youngest grandmasters of all time. In July, he dominated in freestyle in Weissenhaus. So the first event that he did, then he kept playing. Then he won the World Cup. He's also an Olympic gold medalist, like with Team Uzbekistan. So yeah, he's a monster. He is extremely strong, he's obviously full of confidence right now. So let's take a look at his game against Magnus Carlsen. E4. Okay, we have a Ponziani, not quite. Magnus again likes to bring his queen out early in these types of positions. So Sindarov is beating Magnus in 10 moves. This is how their game went. I have a feeling Magnus was trying to castle his king, but he just gets himself in some trouble here. Queen d8, trying to bring the bishop to target the knight, and he just goes down a pawn early in the game. No, actually, sorry. It feels like he's down a pawn, but he's actually not down a pawn. This was white recapturing a pawn. But he's just threatening to win with knight c6. Knight c6 removes the guard and bishop e7, forcing bishop f5, knight f5, and black just cannot make a move. Black just cannot make a move. The knight is under massive pressure, and white is just like gonna win. White is gonna play, knight e7 and bishop e4 and take on b7 and take on e7 and bring the rook, and black can't castle. He's just straight up beating Magnus Carlsen 10 moves. This was Magnus's first game of the day, admittedly, so obviously he needed to kind of activate the neurons a little bit, but bishop e4, rook d1, black's position completely collapsing. He has to end up sacrificing a queen, so he does this, but Sindarov just takes, castles, and he has a queen, and he's just gonna like win. It doesn't really matter that you're Magnus Carlsen. Bishop f7, like black can't defend everything, he has to go here, bishop d5, Sindarov up multiple pawns. And another thing that I love is Sindarov is completely ruthless. Like, he doesn't allow Magnus back in the game. He's also up on time the entire game, so he's not like, oh, dearest, he's not like Gotham, yeah? Oh, dearest me, I have a winning position against a really strong player. Time to diarrhea. Like, you know, he's ruthless, completely ruthless. Like, absolutely, you know, just beast chess. And, yeah, he beat Magnus in their first matchup of the day. Sindarov had a completely insane performance the first day of the round robin, and he qualified as the top seed. But you know, then Fabi also was having quite a good day, quite a good time over there in South Africa. He's playing Parham Maksudlu, the Iranian qualifier who did very well in the Grenka tournament back in May in Karlsruhe. Anyway, none of that is particularly important because actually in this game it was all Parham who sacrificed his rook. Rook takes b8. And a fork on e5, but countered with rook b1. This is the crazy freestyle tactics. Rook sliding all the way down on the board, hitting the bishop on c1. But white is absolutely dominating here. And this game was very topsy-turvy, this rapid game. Parham was crushing from the opening. Crushing is a strong word. And then Fabiano had a dominant advantage in the late middle game. It looked like he was just going to start, you know, converting this endgame into something. Then suddenly Fabi blundered. He played a6, knight d6. And he allowed counterplay in the form of knight takes c4, hitting the bishop on f8. And now Parham has a much better position, which quickly went back to equal because the boys were in a time scramble. And then a few moves later, Fabi blundered again, and actually now knight c4 is just winning for white. White can play e6 here, followed by, you know, some sort of king f2, king e2, and apparently this endgame is winning. I mean, it's kind of hard because the king is right here. So we got e6, king g8, Parham brought his king, and now Parham has to very slowly kind of walk the king over, you know, he can play like a4 to get the rook out of the way, and apparently he's just winning here. So apparently this position is winning for white. Not so obvious that it is. You still kind of feel like you're not making a huge amount of progress. You have to play bishop e7 and d5, and then d6, and that is the winning idea. Parham misses it, now the position is equal, then he plays this and hangs his bishop. And, yeah, he's going to lose the bishop, and the pawns will be stopped. The black king is too close to the pawns. You are not promoting these pawns. The rook is there, and Fabi gets the job done. Now, what's funny... No, this is not funny. Parham ended up with 0 out of 7 in the round robin. Absolutely, like, that is just tough, because he actually had, like, a very decent day of chess itself. He just somehow got the unlucky decision every single time. And that happens. I mean, in every field, sometimes there's a person that doesn't score as much as they should, and that is life. And Parham was 0-7 in the round robin stage. Now, Levon versus Arjun. Here's a couple of other players. Don't worry, we're going back to Magnus in just a moment, as well as Vincent Keimer, Eric Icey, and so on. Aronian. This man loves his freestyle, man. Like, really. Aronian's been at the top of the rankings for many, many years. And in the age of not having to prepare openings, just allowing him to be free-flowing, creative, he is, he is really loving this format. He is good at keeping the tension. He is good at understanding piece dynamics. Like, you have this position, you have the opposite-colored bishop dynamic of the game, 6 pawns each. Like, how do you outmaneuver, you know, Eric Icey, who's this young star? Look at this rook e2. We try to get into an endgame. White is pressuring a tiny bit with the active rook and more active king. Knight e3, g4. And, you know, he keeps trying, and you think, you know, Arjun is going to outplay the older player in the time scramble, but it's actually Levon demonstrating the post-Soviet, you know, school of endgames here. King e4, king centralization. You're trying to trade the rook and then infiltrate with the king to win the weak pawns. And that is exactly what happens. He uses the rook, the bishop, and the king flawlessly and trades into a winning king and pawn endgame. Methodical stuff from Levon. Just, it doesn't matter if it's freestyle, and this is winning. This is winning because this is actually a draw, but with these pawns, it's a win. Because what'll happen is, you know, you're going to try to run the king back to the corner, but I won't care. I'm just going to go this way. And you're going to have to win my pawn and see if these pawns weren't here. Of course, this would just be a draw, but white is just winning. So a very nice game from Levon as well. Magnus, after a tough game against Sindarov, had a more or less decent round-robin day. He got back to his winning ways. By the way, we're also going to be looking at the knockouts quite soon. So these are all games from the round-robin. This one, very imbalanced game, 3 minutes per player, so very tough to navigate all the complexities of the middle game. Magnus is up a pawn, but now we just have a scramble. Both guys, 30 seconds. And this is kind of the weird thing about this format, is that they make them play in this style. Knight e8 check, the back rank knight fork. Here, Fabi could have tried bishop a3 check to win the queen, and then lose his own queen. So bishop a3, knight a3, rook d4, knight h5, gh5. But he would have been down a pawn in an endgame against Magnus, and I think just the fear of that, you know, you don't really want to do that. Unfortunately, though, after queen a5, knight e8 check is a little bit brutal. You lose the bishop, you have a little bit of counterplay, but not enough. Queen e5 is a very nice move. Magnus gets back to the winning ways. Magnus was doing quite well. Like I said, look, he loves this early queen stuff in this format, and he likes to build behind the structure. Vincent Keimer, who has been a freestyle Grand Slam champion this year, had a very tough time in the round robin section. And this was one of those games where early on he went down a pawn and he never got it back. Magnus ended up 2 pawns up, and this doesn't matter if this is freestyle, atomic, loser's chess, giveaway, fog of war, duck chess. This is another day at the office for Magnus. I mean, you give him a pawn in the opening, you gambit a pawn to try to get some initiative. It's just not gonna work. His king walks out early in the game, and I mean, just a very nice game. Although not every game for Magnus was smooth sailing, because there was a game against Arjun Erigaisi, who is always down for a nice scrap against I want to say the world champion, but he's not. I suppose he is a co-champion in Blitz, but I'm just so used to saying the world champion. The best player in the world, though, he is. Arjun's always down for a scrap, and in this game, he handled the imbalance of the pawn structure quite well. Black's king is actually much weaker than White's king, and Arjun really made Magnus feel that. He pressed the knight back all the way, and ultimately he transformed the position into one where he was just winning. I think Magnus lost on time here, actually. I think knight d4 was played. Magnus lost on time, but he's already losing because this is going to come back, and Arjun's going to push these pawns. Maybe Magnus could have tried to save it, but it was actually Erigaisi who got the job done. And Sindarov, for the record, didn't just beat Magnus, he also beat Hans, he beat Fabi, he beat everybody. And Sindarov, I mean, I'm not looking at these games in massive detail because the round robin portion is already over. But friendly reminder, this was Sindarov, just like flashy move, making another queen. You can't take it because of this. Yeah, Sindarov was a man on a mission. He won the round robin extremely convincingly. Hans played on a little bit, and then ultimately resigned because he's going to lose material here, and also he is down a queen for some pieces. Sindarov ended the round robin with 5.5 out of 7, with a win over Magnus, Maksudlu, Caruana, Niemann, Drew Levon, Drew Erigaisi, Drew Vincent Keimer. And he chose to play Parham Maksudlu in the knockout, okay? He chose to play Parham Maksudlu. In this, remember, now they're playing a little bit longer games. They're playing 30-minute games. It used to be 90. This whole freestyle thing started as we want to play like pure chess. Let's play 90-minute chess. And then they were like, 90-minute freestyle is really hard to put on television because it's really confusing. So now they play 30-minute freestyle, which is still not easy. I mean, this is not a lot of, a time to figure out these positions. And, Sindarov is the top seed. He obviously chooses the person that scored 0 points in the round robin. And it ends up coming back to bite because around move 18-19, the game for Sindarov gets a little out of control, and Parham sacks a bishop and begins a devastating attack. By the way, bishop sack is kind of, if pawn takes, there was f5 with an attack on the knight. So it's not quite a sack, but here apparently he's completely winning. Now, in this position, Parham needed to play knight to g3 to threaten knight h5 check to try to remove the king from the defense of this knight. And apparently that position is winning. You get the knight to h5, you're a little bit patient, and then you take the knight on g6 because both knights are in peril. He takes first, and from this point, I mean, when you're 0 for 7, I would know. I've been like half out of 6, You doubt yourself just a little bit at every step. And even though he has an advantage, he no longer has the dynamic play in the position. And quite quickly, Sindarov, with his 5.5 out of 7 confidence, beautiful piece play. It's not even really clear what Parham did wrong. Like, I have no idea what he was supposed to do. H4 was a reasonable move. Bishop E2 was a reasonable move. And he just put his king in the wrong place. Like, he needed to put his king on G2 into this. I can't even explain this. Yeah, Sindarov just took over for the rest of the game. Sindarov played excellent. The pawn structure imbalance created by the opening benefits black. Great coordination from Sindarov. Excellent maneuvering with the pawns, the bishop, the knight, the rook on the b file. And before you know it, Parham Maghsoodloo is 0-8 in South Africa. Just absolutely crazy. Like a bad dream, you know? And it happens. And the worst part is he lost the 9th game too. He is 0-9. He ended up getting defeated by Sindarov 2-0 in the quarterfinal round. So Sindarov moves on to the semis again. This dude has been in like 3 semifinals, I think. He is unstoppable. If not 3, then at least 3 quarterfinals. And he will play the winner of Magnus Carlsen versus Fabiano Caruana, who have not had... Magnus did not have the best round robin by his standards. I think he finished 4th out of 8. But this is normal in freestyle, and then obviously he turns it up in this format, right? So e4, we have a Sicilian defense, although obviously not really. We have third move castles, which you could have played on the first move, actually. In fact, it might be the best move, but okay, we don't castle that early. B3, F4, kind of looks like a close Sicilian, a very weird position. Fabi playing very nicely, very patient. Magnus trying to create some sort of attack here. Fabi putting the knight in the middle on e5, looking for a dark squared structure. Magnus ends up giving up the bishop to try to destabilize black's king. But there's nothing, actually. King is very safe. Queen f4, you kind of want to sacrifice something. And suddenly Fabi's like, wait a minute, dude. Who do you think you're attacking, right? Like, I'm ready for counterplay whenever you give me the opportunity. Knight f4. Here, Magnus had some advantage. It looked like he was about to break through the position, but he never actually broke through. And after king h8, the counterplay, it feels like, is about to begin for black. And both guys have a minute, so there's really no time to get into the essence of the game. And the crushing counter move g5. I mean, it felt like 15 moves of Magnus trying to attack Fabiano. And now Magnus has to sack, because otherwise his pieces were pushed back and the tactics were not working out in his favor. G4 was coming, for example, which would have trapped his bishop and opened up, tactical attacks on the G file, and he goes for this, but after rook f1 and de6, ain't nothing here. He goes for d4, pawn takes, knight back to g6, everything is protected, and Magnus loses. Fabi just patiently waited for Magnus to attack him, and it just didn't work. It just didn't work at all, now Magnus is a game away from being eliminated from the last freestyle event, and he will drop down to the consolation bracket. This is also what happened in Vegas, I think. He went down, and then he ended up having to win 3rd place. So he in the next game, he's looking to strike back. He's playing with the black pieces, and he knows he has to play, by the way, again, trying to bring his queen out early. He loves this stuff. He plays b4, limiting the space on that side of the board. He knows he's going to have to attack. And this probably reminds him of some of the days that he would play certain openings like the Sveshnikov, when he would, have kingside attacks, although this doesn't really resemble that structure whatsoever. Fabi tries to wall out that left side of the board. Look at this. Look at this. Magnus goes down a pawn early. So he allows queen b4, and he plays knight d5 and d6. This is mind-blowing. Everything on that side of the board for Fabi is stuck. And Fabi's like, all right, I'm just going to play solid. But here comes Magnus with g4, bishop g5, and he's like, I'm going to get my queen in the game like this. This is how we're going to play. While these pieces are going to be stranded on this side of the board. This is wild stuff. If this works, this is going to be absolutely genius. Knight c4, Magnus grabs the bishop, keeps the queen on that side, and here comes the queen zipping over. Fabi keeps pressuring on that side because he kind of has to. He has to make sure the light-squared bishop never gets out. Magnus sacrificing a knight. Look at this. Now, you actually had to take this. You had to. That was the only way. Because then, black is going to come in with the pawns. It looks horrible, but actually it's survivable, which is, crazy. Rook e1. Now Magnus comes back, and he just won a pawn. But suddenly, it gets a little bit out of control again, as Fabi is able to create a full blockade on the left side of the board against both the rook and the light-squared bishop. Magnus still playing h5, hammering it down. Fabi fighting back with h4, bishop back to h6. a4, creating a full wall. Everything is guarding everything. This bishop is never going to see the light of day. So Magnus is like, all right, I'm going to have to do it without the bishop. Rook e8, knight c4. King slides back to avoid any knight e5 check business. Castle's f4. But how is Magnus going to attack? He doesn't have enough pieces. Queen e4 looking for a queen trade. Guess what? You know what's like cruel fate about playing Magnus Carlsen? Like, everything he's doing is trying to attack you, right? So what do? You go to trade the queens, because with no queen, he can't mate you. Queen e4, rook e4, and now the most horrifying move you could have ever expected in this position. You ready? a6. Now, this will come apart. The rook will enter, the bishop will enter, and white will lose. White's entire position was kind of hinging on the fact that this bishop and this side of the board would never come alive. Now it will, because there's pawn takes, and out of nowhere comes the bishop on the 29th move of the game, sacrificing itself. The rook comes in with a fork. Magnus arriving, bishop g7, rook there, rook c6, and he is just winning. He pumps the brakes on the attack, instead going for a middle/endgame where he is totally winning. And the irony is that it is Fabiano's bishop who is the problem. It cannot activate. Rook e4, tricky. And this game is over. Rook e2, rook f2, rook f1, rook g1, and I take the bishop. And this game is finished. It is finished. Magnus is up a knight. He's going to walk in. He's going to trade. That is the end of the game. Which means these two guys have to play a tiebreak. That's what happens in this format. They have to go to a tiebreak now. 5-minute blitz tiebreaks. You know, it was tied, and Sindarov is waiting in the wings, right? He's going to play the winner of this match. Magnus definitely full of confidence, getting a little bit of mojo back with such a victory, threatening the attack constantly, then simplifying into the endgame. This one was weird. This one was totally different than the last one. Last one was crazy. This one was a little bit more stable for a long time. Both guys have to play an entire game with less than 10 seconds, which for freestyle is completely cruel. It's brutal stuff. Rooks and knights. Who do you bet money on in a position where you both have 10 seconds on the clock and it's an endgame? If you don't bet on Magnus Carlsen, you are a lunatic, or you know something about it that we don't, which means you have insider information. B3, yeah, Magnus immediately getting weaknesses created. Knight e5 pressuring. The knight takes, the d2 pawn is collapsing. That means the white position is collapsing. And in a scramble, what more can you expect? It is a Magnus Carlsen endgame victory, which means in the very next game, Fabiano now has to win on demand with black. And when you have to win on demand in blitz freestyle, it's just not the same. It's not the same. Not everybody has the composure to kind of keep the game going in a certain way. Fabi tries to keep the tension early. It backfires. Why does it backfire? Black is never, ever going to do anything here. This is a total freeze. This is top position in wrestling. You are not getting up. You are not going to get out of this position because you need to dictate the space with your pawns, and you cannot do that. There is no dictating the space here with the pawns. Can't do it. Fabi's trying, but Magnus has an absolute lock on the position. Fabi sacks a pawn, looks for counterplay. There is no counterplay. He is just down 2 pawns now. Convincingly, he might win one back, but by the time he wins it back, Magnus is going to start trading all the pieces. You know, anything can happen in a time scramble, but this is total domination. Queen b8, queen c2, king a2, g5, total suffocation of the position. You even sack a rook for good measure because you're going to either promote a pawn or win the rest of the pawns. He takes it, bishop d4, and the entire position collapses. King h7 you can play. I'll play literally any move there. f4, g6, f4, f5, g6, doesn't matter. And Magnus Carlsen moves on to play Javikir Sindarov. The semifinal we all wanted, the semifinal we all deserved. We were good. We were good. We were good this holiday season. None of us were naughty, so we are getting Sindarov versus Carlsen. Magnus will look for revenge. This is, I think, the second or third time they have played against each other on tour. Meanwhile, Niemann, Aronian were playing, and Keimer Erigaisi. Niemann Aronian also went to the tiebreaks. These boys put on a great show. Levon was the second seed in the tournament. He also won Freestyle Las Vegas over Hans. So they played against each other in the final there. And this one was very, very complicated. And again, look at this. This one was a tiebreak. And like by move 15, the boys have less than a minute, and Levon has 5 seconds. So Levon is playing this game with 5 seconds on the clock. There is no way that can be good for his nervous system. That man is born in the 1980s. All right, I don't care how healthy you are. There is no way this can be good for your nervous system. He's playing every move in 2 seconds. Hans also down to 3 seconds on the clock. Total chaos. This could be guess the elo. Watch. Bishop c5 is winning for white. He doesn't play it. Now knight e4 is winning for black. He doesn't play it. He plays bishop a1, threatening mate, obviously. Now queen d6 check, and bishop d4 is a mistake because you will lose the h7 bishop, but it's still equal. But we're going to have a lot more blunders because in a moment after rook b4, both pawns are won by Levon, and Hans is down 2 pawns. Knight e6, Levon is going to let him back into the game right here, but it's not very clear why. You have to go queen c7 and look for various sacrifices, and after rook f4, knight c4 is just mate because you are threatening the queen and you are threatening queen b2 mate. So you have to defend yourself somehow. You have to sacrifice queen c2. He goes knight e5, but this is just child's play. Queen d5, rook g8, and Hans resigns. He resigns because rook g3 is collapsing, and Hans is down to the consolation bracket. So actually Levon moves on, and he will face the winner of Keimer versus Erigaisi. Keep in mind, Keimer had a rough round robin. I think he finished second to last. What was that? That was weird. What on earth happened here? All right, this is not the game. I don't know what's happening. I'm gonna go full screen for a second. Oh, for some reason I had the same game twice. I don't know, and it just like refreshed the scoreline. All right, small technical difficulties. Don't worry. We will sort everything out. Not to fear. Keimer versus Erigaisi. Is no longer on the chess.com events page. I cannot find it. What? What is happening? I have never seen this before. This is a legendary blooper. Vincent Keimer's games are no longer there. I mean, whenever you guys go look at this, they might be, but they're literally gone. Okay, well, Vincent Keimer beat Arjun Erigaisi. And he moved on to face Levon Aronian. I'm not even... Okay, I will show this to you. I mean, I was trying not to spoil anything. They're not here. Parham Maksud Sindarov, Levon Aronian, Hans Niemann, Magnus Fabi. There is no Vincent Keimer. They just removed him and Arjun from existence. What? I refreshed this page 10 times. Okay, well that concludes this recap. Clearly they did not appreciate their game enough. They just wiped it completely from the tournament. That's really cool. Well, no, I promise Keimer beats Erigaisi, and that means Sindarov will play against Carlsen, and Keimer will play against Aronian. So actually, the 4 best freestyle players in the world, probably, I would say. Definitely Magnus, is a favorite anywhere. Levon just won a tournament, and every one of these players has been a champion. So, yeah, I mean, let's go. See you in the semis, and get out of here.